And thank you for everybody who's joining us this evening. This is our third in our digital marketing tips series. And today we're going to be talking about content and content generation and really giving you the basics of content marketing. The intended audience is going to be entrepreneurs and small business owners. And we hope that you walk away from this with some basic content tips that you can really apply immediately. We try our best to give you free tips that you can do, sometimes low cost, but mostly free is what we try to do. As we know that small business owners are usually on a tight budget. So we try to give you really valuable and things that can be meaningful to your business, but at a free cost. And so my name is Amy, and Stephanie, who is the other person on camera, we're going to be presenting today. And we'll go ahead and start with our content marketing basics. And the first thing I wanted to just mention, you've heard this phrase over and over again, content is king. And if you look at this kind of word mashup, you just see all of the different places that you can, it's ridiculous, all of the different places that you can deliver your content to people. And what we're going to talk about now is kind of the basics of it, but also how you can create content, what type of content you create, and why you should create it. And so we can go to the next slide. We like to, for those of you that maybe have joined us for our previous webinars, we like to keep things in groups of 3 so that it is easy to remember, easy to digest information. And so what is content and how to generate a lot of it is what we're going to focus on. The 3 items we're going to cover are the different types of content, how you can get to know your consumer, and then content creation tips. And so I'm going to start talking about the types of content if we go to the next slide. And really there are literally hundreds of types of content that you can produce for your website, for social media, etc. But I've tried to break this down into 3 basic buckets. But if you were to do a Google search on types of content, you'll really see that there are hundreds of them out there. But you've got written content, visual content, and interactive content. And you want to do your best as a small business owner to cover all 3 of these so that you're not showcasing the same type of content over and over again. So examples of written content would be probably what people are most familiar with, which would be blog articles, your copy that's on your website, the copy that's on your homepage, things like that. That's written content. Books, ebooks, all of those things would be considered written content. That's what most people do and what most people are familiar with. I would say the next common thing would be the visual content. That's when you start thinking about videos, video clips that you see on social media, fuller length videos that you might see on YouTube, things like that. And then interactive content, I would say, is probably the least common that people do, especially entrepreneurs and small business owners. But that's when you get to things like infographics, anything where you're allowing people to interact with your content or whether you're interacting with other people. So if you think about an interview, for example, an interview on video would be considered interactive content. You might be interviewing one of your customers or interviewing a thought leader in your market. But items like this where people can interact a little bit with your content would be the interactive. And again, the goal here is to try your best when you're creating content to cover all 3 of these areas. So don't just limit yourself to blog articles on your website, or don't just limit yourself to purely writing on social media, but put your images in there, your video clips in there, things like that to make sure you cover visual and interactive content. Okay, next slide. And then I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie, and she's going to talk about how to know your customer.
So one of the most important things that you want to do whenever you're trying to better understand not only your business, but also your consumer is to understand your why. So determine why exactly are you offering whatever service you're offering within your business. And then also how you're going to get that message across to your primary customer, consumer, or target audience. Next, you want to research, ask, and engage. So one thing that I highly recommend as it relates to research is to go out and search trends. So that means going through your Google Analytics. That means going out and reading blog posts about not only your industry and the service industry that you're working within directly, but also looking to see what types of things your competitors are doing. Looking also to see whenever you're looking in your analytics, what your customer and consumers' behaviors are online. Within Google Analytics, there is a great tool out there that will allow you to actually go and see where people go to as soon as they leave your website. So that helps you become better informed about the search habits, but also the spending habits of your customer and consumer. Next, we just encourage you guys to just do an old-fashioned ask. Ask your customer, ask your consumer, ask your target audience. What do you like? What types of information are you looking to read about? How can we better solve your problem? What obstacles and hurdles are you currently faced with that you think that we might be able to solve? And then next, engage. So I think I may have mentioned this on a previous webinar that we had, but I used to be what you would call a social media investigator. Like that was my full-time job. I was literally a social media investigator. And my job was to go out there and engage with potential clients and customers that we had based on certain things they talked about on social media. So for instance, if I am a social media investigator for a record label, the number one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go out there and see what conversations my target audience is having with other record labels. If I am a soul food restaurant, I'm going to go out there on social media and see what my customers and consumers who also are friends of other soul food restaurants are talking about. What types of information are they posting on their social media page? What types of information are they sharing? And then most of all, how can I jump into the conversation? Now with social media, I just ask that you err with a little bit of caution because you don't want to appear to be a stalker either, but make the conversation natural. So, and that means if you see someone posted that they like soul food 2 years ago through some search you did on social media, that brought that up, do not go and say, hey, I see you like soul food because they said that 2 years ago. But if they say it today, then feel free to jump into the conversation. Say, hey, what's your favorite food? Hey, check out this recipe that our restaurants offer. Engagement is super important when you're trying to build your customer base, and you're also trying to make sure that you're giving information that your consumer is actually looking for. And then last but not least, we encourage you to do something. Now, I know this sounds, pretty simple, but so often, especially when it comes to content marketing, whether that is creating blog posts, creating video content, creating social posts, one thing that always trips up small businesses, especially, is they get so caught up in the process that they never actually execute on anything. I know it can be scary to go out there and put new content out into the world for everyone to see, but sometimes you just won't know what's going to happen until you actually do it. Kind of like Nike says, just do it. Don't be afraid. Jump right in. And the best way for you to learn what your customer doesn't like is to give them what they don't like. And the best way for you to learn what they like is to give them something they like. So that's super important as well.
Okay, and I wanted to next talk about tips for content creation. And, Stephanie, you can feel free to jump in on these. But what we wanted to focus on are 3 things. Again, using your network to create content, I think is something that people overlook a lot. One of the things, especially as a small business owner, you have other people in your network that run similarly small businesses, but different types of businesses. So for example, our company, Creative Allies, is a marketing company, but we actually use partners for our video work. So anything that we do with our clients for video, we use a few entrepreneurs that are videographers. Well, it's easy enough for us to call one of them up and say, hey, let's do a podcast interview, or let's just do a regular video interview, or maybe we could co-author an article or something like that. And that way we're generating like one piece of content, but it can be used for their audience and also used for our audience. We've done a photo shoot before for images for our website, and the photographer that we use asked if we could do some things for his portfolio, separate from Creative Allies, but just for his portfolio. So using your network of other entrepreneurs that you know that could also use content generation for their website or their social media or their portfolios, and figure out how you can work together so that it's free, which is what we love the most.
And let me jump in real quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
You go number 2. It's something that Amy and I have discussed quite a few times with a lot of our clients, especially our DJs, is that cross promotion could also be super important. So let's say, we'll give the example of a DJ. If you are a wedding DJ and you have a friend who is a wedding event planner, offer a blog post to that event planner to say, hey, I know that we offer complimentary services to the same target audience. So I can write a blog post on your site about DJs, and then in turn, you can come and write a post on my wedding DJ site about event planning. So use cross promotion. I'm a firm believer that teamwork makes the dream work. So the more you can partner with other content generators, the better it is for both of you guys. And then both of you guys ultimately end up winning.
Yep, absolutely. The second point on here is reusing content. This is probably one of my favorite things to talk about because it's so powerful and it's so free again, which we all love. But you know, when you're creating content, it's actually pretty amazing how one piece of content can be turned into other things. So sometimes you might think, well, I have this article I wrote a year ago. There's probably nothing I can do with it. But the reality is there's probably a lot you can do with it. Unless it was about some specific event, even if it's about a specific event, though, you can probably turn it into something else. But taking that old content and figuring out either how it still applies to what's happening in the world today or what's happening in your business, or maybe you could take one sentence from it that's really great and use that as a social media post. Maybe you can take one paragraph of it and record it for a short video snippet that you can do. But there are usually at least two or three different ways that you can take a piece of content and reuse it for something else. And it is a great way to make use of older content. If you're running, low on bandwidth to be able to create something new, you can pull back into stuff that you've done in the past and figure out how to reuse it. And then I think the other part of it, so that's like taking old content and reusing it. But the other part of it is really just focusing on all of the different ways that you can distribute content. So even if you create something now, for example, this webinar that we're doing, it's being recorded, but there may be something, maybe there's a really great question that gets asked. And while we might answer it here tonight, we might also say, man, that would make a great blog topic. And then we would take that answer and just expand on it a little bit and create a blog. Or maybe we would just pose that question out to our social media audience. But just look, being very observant about the content that you are naturally creating and the conversations you're having and how you can reuse that across your different channels. And then the content curation, Stephanie, you want to take this one?
Yes. So again, it kind of goes back to what Amy was saying earlier, is that you want to make sure that you're curating content the best way you know how. So that is reusing the content, like she said, and just making sure that you're turning, let's say, your blog post into a video, your video into a social post. We actually had a conversation earlier today that we were going to take a challenge between the two of us to decide, to figure out how many times our conversations could possibly lead into a blog post. And that's what content curation is all about. It's about us taking the ideas that we have on paper and then curating them into multiple different places and developing them into different types of content.
Yeah. And the other part of this too is really tapping into other people's content as well. So let's just say you read 3 different articles on WordPress because maybe you were thinking about moving your website over to WordPress. Well, then what you could do is, you could write a blog post, the top 3 reasons that you should use WordPress, but maybe all of those reasons came from the articles that you read. They weren't, it's not stealing it or it's not plagiarism, but it's like what you read and then your opinion about what you read. You see a lot of times articles are, top 10 this or the best this or the top 20 ways to do this. All of those things could be pulled from other people's content. Another one I've not personally tried, but have seen a lot are like highlighting people. So let's say, depending on your industry, you might say the 10 best restaurants in downtown Raleigh. We're here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so again, it's just opinion, but it's also content. And so you're not, starting a restaurant, you're just simply giving your opinion about different things that already exist or content that's already created. And so content curation can be a really cool way to create something in a probably shorter amount of time than it would be if you had to come up with a topic all on your own. But I think it can be really powerful. All of these can be really powerful to create content in a low cost and an efficient way.